Good morning, everybody. Nikki Burnett here. Today's Taste Life Nutrition Radio and podcast streaming live on KUHSdenver.com. Today we're going to have some fun talking about individualized health. I know that sounds pretty vague, but it's actually, we're going to get super specific and have a ton of fun with it. I have been digging into this for the entirety of my career, but probably the last year or so. That's not true either. 5 years. Anyway, really digging into what it looks like to individualize care for people and what it means and why it's so different. So we're going to chat a little bit about that, but I think first things first is we always start the show with gratitude. Gratitude can change the world. I truly believe that. I was not able to get in my gratitude in my Bible study this morning. It just reminded me that it didn't happen. So I'll have to be sure that I get that done. But I think it's an important way to start the day. It's an important way to end the day. And I think it's important to think about it throughout the day. You know, what are we grateful for? Because those are the things that, you know, when times are hard, that keep us going. And I think there's just so much in the world to be grateful for. Anyway, so we went to the mountains over the weekend. We took a long weekend. I think I talked a little bit about this before leaving, but we went to the mountains, and you know, when we go camping, we try to get as far away as we possibly can. Try to get far away from people. We're always on a river, but this time we had, I think, a total of 15 people and 13 people and 6 dogs or something like that, you know, a bunch of kids. So it was really a good time. You know, when we go, one of my favorite things is just going out and cooking amazing meals. Sounds silly because it's certainly not easy to cook out in the middle of nowhere, but I just love it. I love cooking on a fire. I love the prep. I love everything about it, and we do it up for sure. It's a lot of fun. So anyway, I'm grateful for, thank you, grateful for the time to be in the mountains and to be with family and friends and the dogs and all of the things. It was such a good time. So today I want to jump in to precision wellness. This is something that I've been working on for quite some time, and I'm super excited about it. But as I stated, you know, through the entirety of my career, what I have really strived to do with everybody is to be as individualized as possible based on as much data as I can gather. So when I'm looking at the data, or when I'm looking at a person and what I want to gather, so I'm looking at their history, I'm looking at their stress, their lifestyle, their history of trauma, obviously their food and their sleep, their relationships, you know, I mean, I don't, you know, obviously these mental and emotional aspects are not my forte, but it's a part of who they are. So all of that stuff needs to be taken into consideration when we're looking at how to individualize care and what their goals are. And so then we go into what is the biochemical data? What are the labs that we can look at? Are there labs that they have already had drawn that we can look at? Certainly, depending on how old they are. But then what are the other labs that we can do? And one of my favorite things, just, you know, nerd time, is functional lab testing. And so there's so many amazing panels out there that give us a really good view of what's going on in the body and what the body's trying to tell us, you know. So I say this all the time, that the body is communicating with us at all times. Symptoms are the body's way of communicating with us, right? They're red flags. They're like the body saying, all right, I need you to pay attention now because I can't do this on my own anymore. So we have to be in partnership with our body. And another thing that I fully believe to be true is it's so innately and beautifully created by God that when we call it dysfunction, when we call it, symptoms and disease and all of these things, this again is just the body just talking to us. The body is doing what it knows how to do to keep us alive. Its ultimate goal is to keep us alive. So we may think it's being dysfunctional, but what if it's just doing what it knows to do based on what it has, right? If it doesn't have the nutrients to do its job and to have a good, strong, robust immune system, then it's just going to do what it knows to do. Whether it's just trying to get your attention, whether it's managing one thing because it's got all of this other stuff going on. It's hard to really know exactly what's going on sometimes, and I think these are things that we're still learning. But that's why managing symptoms, listening to the body, understanding that it is communicating with us is so key. And so we want to look at symptoms to understand, and maybe we don't have any symptoms, which is awesome. But how can we still optimize in order to be better today as well as be better for the rest of our days, right? And I think that's such an important. It's important to me. Maybe it's not important to everyone. We all have our different goals in life, but for me, aging well and living well for as long as I'm here. I don't know how long I'm going to be here, but I want to live well. I want to walk. I want to talk. I want to think. I want to work. I want to do all of these things until the day that I'm no longer here, until the minute that I'm no longer here. It's about that quality. Quantity is great, but if you don't have the quality while you have the quantity, then it's a big problem. And so, this is the stuff that makes such a difference for people and makes a difference for me when I'm working with people. So I want to go through some of these things because we have the ability to really dig in and fully optimize. We have the ability to use labs and technology and all of these things, and we can put them all together to create something that's so specific to each person. It's really fascinating. So a couple of things that I think that is, if we start really basic and we're talking about diets, right? For one, I hate the word diet. Diet just sucks. Now, with that being said, I do believe that there are therapeutic type diets out there. Most of the time, these therapeutic type diets are meant to be short term, for the most part, right? Not always, but for the most part. I want people to live a lifestyle that is full of good, healthy, fun, delicious food. Right? And so when we go on a diet, it doesn't stick, right? So there are multiple reasons why going on a diet can just be really hard, right? It's not sustainable. You feel deprived. It's just kind of become such an ugly word that I just don't use it. It really is a food lifestyle. Now, yes, some people, if there are certain chronic conditions, a keto diet can help. Right? I think we got to be really careful with that. Keto is not for everyone. Keto, I don't believe, is for most people. If we were to take a step back and determine, and this is what I try to do, if I want to put someone on a keto diet, I'm going to look at their genetics first. Now, if I were to, and I've tried this, to do a keto diet myself, and it was not good. Now, I have a couple of specific variants anyway, that I don't metabolize lipids the way that most people do. I think the number is like 20 or 24% of the population is this specific genotype that I am. And so to do a keto diet is going to end up being more problematic and potentially push cardiovascular disease, right? Push Alzheimer's disease. And so these are things that we have to be really, really careful about. This, diet fads are a huge problem for some people, not for everybody. They can be great for some people, right? But we've got to understand what they're doing to us biochemically. And so I think that, you know, another one that I mostly have a problem with is like being vegan or vegetarian. I think they have a therapeutic purpose, depending on the situation, but I don't think they're long term. I was vegetarian when I started nutrition school. I was probably within 2 or 3 months that I determined through the data, through the research, through learning in my education, that there are too many things missing in a vegan diet or vegetarian diet. Nutrients, micronutrients, and certainly macronutrients. And so understanding what your body can handle and what is most beneficial is so important. And do you want to do a short-term diet like that for therapeutic purposes, but then move into something that is a lifestyle? I think that that's the goal. Nothing's 100%, but that's the goal. And so when we're looking at, one of the things that I have here is that diets don't work, data works. And that's where I love gathering the data on each of my patients, each of my clients, and putting it all together so we have a good understanding of the macronutrients, the micronutrients. How do we start to manage hormones? How do we start to manage other symptoms that somebody might be dealing with, right? So, cookie cutter is something that is long gone. This is a fad. The cookie cutter diet is a fad that thankfully is no longer around. Now, there's still some things that oh my goodness, that we see on Instagram or we see on TikTok or whatever. Just, if you don't have the answers for you, find somebody who can find the answers for you. That's all I want to say. So let's see. So there are a couple of situations where I think so I'm trying to think through this because there's so much here. And I think maybe what I'll do is I'll give you my history, a little bit of my history anyway. So I have been over, and I think I've talked about this a little bit in the past, but over probably 5 years, I have been digging in and trying to discover my body. What does it mean? What's going on? What's it trying to tell me? I don't have a bunch of symptoms, but I work out and I feel like I still have a little bit of excessive weight. So why is that? So I start researching and I start doing all of these different things to my body to understand what's happening. On top of that, I'm starting to go through perimenopause. Well, probably been going through perimenopause for like 10 years, right? But I'm 53 years old, so the body is changing, and I know it's changing, and I start to feel that change, right? I'm grateful that I don't have a lot of symptoms when it comes to this stuff, but it still doesn't mean that my hormones aren't fluctuating significantly, creating maybe this excessive weight, right? And so I start to dig into my own data and my own genetics, and I start taking all of this information and putting it all together. So I've done probably 3 different genetic tests. That's not necessary, right? Your genetics don't change, but you can get different information from different genetic tests depending on what it is. So the one that I did specifically was the nutrigenomics test, which is it's about your nutrition, what your body needs. It gives you some cardiovascular risk factors. It gives you your exercise potential, right? You can put so I took that and put that into my list of things that I needed to put together for me. So then I start putting in my health status. I'm a woman. I start looking at body typing. So there are a couple of different body typing that we can put together that can give us an understanding. Here, I'll just tell you. So we've got the somatotypes, which is probably what you've heard of. So the somatotypes is the classic body typing. So you've got your endomorph, which stores fat easily, is strong, and needs carb control. This is me, right? I crave the carbs. I have one of my genes is that I crave sugar. And so that has been something that I've had to learn to manage. I still have to manage it, right? I'm a lot better than I used to be. But I didn't grow up, where I needed to manage. I didn't grow up knowing that I needed to manage sugar. I just ate it, right? That's what you do. So you've got your mesomorph, which is naturally muscular, thrives with balanced macros. And then you've got your ectomorph, and so lean, high metabolism, and needs more carbs. So you can probably, when we talk about that, you can probably visualize people who are these different body types. But then there's more, right? So we can also look at glandular types. So this is kind of your hormonal type. And so you have your thyroid, so you have energy fluctuations and carb sensitive. That's totally me. Another thing about thyroid types is you start to lose your outer quarter of your eyebrows. Totally me, right? And it's the shape of your body as well. And so you've got your adrenal type, which is stress-driven, stores fat around the midsection. That's not me. I tend to store fat on my lower section. And then you've got your pituitary type, which is they've got cravings and they're appetite-driven. And then the gonadal type, which is hips, thigh storage, and hormone-driven. And so to be able to put those two things together, so we'll grab that data, put that into my little way of doing things, and then we'll also look at blood type. Now, I'm going to say this: I am not a blood type diet type of person. I used to follow the guy, and I still do. I like the guy who wrote the book. I'm not thinking of his name right now, but he, when COVID first hit, he was doing a whole bunch of stuff on COVID and managing COVID and that kind of thing. And I really like him, but I don't follow or subscribe to the blood type diet. But I think knowing your blood type and including it into this data can be helpful and informative. And so when we take all of this information, so we take that and then we start to add in genetics. And then we start to add in male versus female. And then we start to add in age, right? That matters. We start to add in, where we are as women, or hormones. Are we menstruating? Are we perimenopausal? Are we no longer menstruating? Right? All of these things make a huge difference in what we do. And so we track this stuff, right? And so we can then take in, so there are a few, going back to the genetics, most of you have probably heard of MTHFR. A lot of people have this SNP, or there's a couple of SNPs. And so there is a fear around this SNP, and I think it's because so many people it's the first one to sort of hit mainstream, right? Ben Lynch, as far as I know, Ben Lynch is the one who, Dr. Ben Lynch, if you don't know him, he's great. I did a lot of my genetic education by him and his conferences and that kind of thing. But he brought the MTHFR SNP to the forefront, and then brought in the epigenetic, nutrigenomic, all the different pathways that these things, how the body metabolizes food and how the enzymes that push the pathways down and that kind of thing. So understanding, especially a few specific epigenetic SNPs, I think is really important. Those have been key for me to understand, and I think it's key for anyone, because having these SNPs doesn't mean that there's anything wrong. It just means that's how you're built. It's how you're created. And so when you know it, you then know how to manage it. And so if you have MTHFR SNP, then you might need a methylfolate versus you might need I am not speaking well today. So you might need a methylated form of folate versus a synthetic form, which is going to be anybody anyway, right? So folic acid is a synthetic form of folate. And it's a problem because especially women who are looking to get pregnant, who are pregnant, we're told to take folic acid. Folic acid is a real problem for people, but especially with the MTHFR SNP, right? So, and it could be that the methylated form is not what you need also. That depends on your makeup as well. Maybe it's the adenosine form. And maybe it's the hydroxyl form, right? So those are all things that can really help us to dig in what is best for you and for your body to optimize. And so other things, we talked a little bit about my own lipid metabolism. There's an ApoE genotype that I have that and that a lot of, everybody has an ApoE genotype, but there are subsections of it, right? And so mine pushes me toward understanding, and it can help all of us understand fat metabolism, right? It can help us understand how we manage, how our bodies manage lipids. And I don't manage them well. And I don't manage saturated fat well. And so, we have in our world today, especially in functional medicine, we have this viewpoint, which is correct, that saturated fat is not bad. Now, there's a lot of ifs there, right? And a lot of caveats. So saturated fat, if it's coming from a healthy animal, is going to be a healthy fat for those who can manage that type of fat. So I have to now keep I don't have to, but I do because I know the information and I want to optimize. But I keep my saturated fat low, but I still eat fat. I eat plenty of fat. I eat a lot of olive oil, right? And I don't do coconut oil very often, or coconut milk very often, which I used to do it all the time because it's high in saturated fat. It's not bad for most people, but it's not great for me, right? So you start to see how you can take all of this information and put it in and start to really understand how to live on a daily basis that is the best for you. So the fat that you need, the protein that you need, the carbs that you need, right? So we can start to look at these macros and help you understand what is best as far as your protein consumption, but then how do you manage carbohydrates, right? So we start to dig in there. We start to look at things like glucose spikes. This is super interesting too, because this is something that I learned about me due to this ApoE genotype that I have, is I don't manage lipids well, but I also don't manage two types of energy well together. What I mean by that is, for me, eating a fat and eating a carbohydrate at the same time is really inflammatory for me. So I don't do that anymore. And so when I eat carbohydrates, I mix it with protein. Most people, I think, can mix their carbohydrates with a fat or with a protein to start to manage those glucose spikes. But it's not me, right? So, and that's okay. And so for the most part, I'm very aware of when I'm taking in carbohydrates, and my carbohydrates tend to be fruit. And so I'm not talking about like sweet potatoes. I'm not talking about beets or carrots. What I am talking about is the fruit. I'm talking about if I were to do recooked potatoes. I don't usually do potatoes alone, but if you do recooked potatoes, it helps to build short chain fatty acids. So we talked about that in the last episode, talking about GI health and GI function. So I think that potatoes, especially cooked and cooled potatoes, have a real important therapeutic place. But I want to manage when I eat it. So I eat it with protein and I don't eat any fat. So it's a low fat protein. So maybe it's a chicken breast, or maybe it is some salmon, something like that. And that's when I eat my something that's more carby. But if I'm going to eat high fat, higher fat, I'm going to leave the carbs out entirely, except for some sweet potatoes or beets or something like that, right? So let's see. So other things that we want to look at, so we can look at, so if we're getting back to kind of the functional testing, we're looking at the genetics, hormone panels for both men and women. So we talked about, women specifically and their hormone status at that time. We can also look at men. We have women who go through menopause. Men can go through andropause. They shouldn't, right? It's not a normal process like women do. It is a matter of an unhealthy lifestyle. It really is. And so if we can we can look at a man who has a little bit of a belly, right? It's got that belly, maybe some depression and some frustration and lack of motivation, produces hormones. And so what can happen with men who are imbalanced and inflamed and stressed and drink too much beer is what can happen is that the testosterone that they are producing is aromatized or converted into estrogen. So you have men who are struggling with low testosterone and high estrogen because their testosterone is converting. Now, this is a normal process, and it happens in women as well, but not to the degree where you start to hit this point of andropause in men. And so we have to be so careful too with men, because often, and I see this all the time, that they get tested, they're low in testosterone, and they immediately go get testosterone pellets or injections or whatever, and they don't feel any better. And it gets worse. Why? Because their testosterone is converting. You have to address lifestyle factors too. So that's where something like putting all this information together can come in, where we start making the lifestyle modifications. We start understanding all of the hormones, and then the nutrition that goes into managing the hormones and managing the diet and the lifestyle and that kind of thing. So let's see, thyroid, especially for women. Really looking at the thyroid is a big deal, and not just the thyroid, but looking at antibodies. What we don't do, I think, as often as we should in conventional medicine is look at antibodies. We're only looking at like TSH, right, or maybe a couple of other ones, but we don't look at antibodies. So we are diagnosed hypothyroid when really it's potentially Hashimoto's. And so we always need to look at the entire story. So we don't just want to look at TSH. We don't just want to look at, free T3 and T4 and all of those things. We want to look at all of them. There are 9 or 10 markers that we want to look at to help us determine what's going on with the thyroid. We have thyroid hormone receptors all on every cell of our body, and so when there's dysfunction with the thyroid, there's going to be dysfunction in other places as well. So we want to understand that. And thyroid hormone is not produced by the thyroid; it's produced by the pituitary. So that's another, big picture piece of this is understanding the pathways and why it's happening in the first place. And this is where functional medicine, functional nutrition can play such a big role, is we want to dig down as deep as we can to find out the why behind what's going on. And so understanding your thyroid, it can be fairly easy to manage, but you got to know the why behind it, right? We've talked a lot about the gut, and I think bringing in the gut, a gut panel into this type of program that is so data driven can really be key, but especially for those who are struggling with GI issues or brain fog or pain, right? It's kind of all over the board. But, we look at these panels and we can see the beneficial microbes and if they're robust or not. But then it also helps us to understand if we have infection, if there's something that we don't have enough of, if we are dysbiotic, right? We don't have enough of the good bugs and too many of the bad bugs. What are the things that we can bring in specifically for you and for your microbiome that will help to build, that robust microbiome? So that's huge to understand your bugs and what you can do to build that up. It could be that helps with so many of the other things that you're struggling with. Dysbiosis is rampant. We are low in so many of our good commensal bugs, and it creates inflammation, it disrupts our mental and emotional health, and it causes all kinds of junk, right? So it's a smart thing to do, doesn't have to be done, but it helps for us to know the proper prebiotics to feed the probiotics to help you, right? And then mixing up all the different fibers and really focusing on that. That's been another focus of mine as I've been digging deeper and deeper into the microbiome and what it needs and how I start to build my own microbiome better than it was before. I don't have GI issues typically, but what can I do to make it better? And that's been a lot of fun. This is all stuff we've talked about over the last few weeks, but we can make it better, and it really should be a focus, because I think I know that it everything that we are, for the most part, right, is so wrapped up in the health of our microbiome. Let's see. So I think maybe now we talk a little bit, we hit on it a little bit, but we talk a little bit about some of the technology. The technology is cool. And I think that has been sort of the game changer for me. And as I am, working with more and more of my clients and patients with the technology, this is the stuff that can make a big difference. And so I think this is a good place to talk a little bit about Pnoe. And so our sponsor is Mountain Medical Concepts. And so Susan Drake is the founder of Mountain Medical Concepts, and she has all of these really cool wellness, whether it's devices or peptides or exosomes or whatever, all of these cool things for practitioners. And it is specifically for practitioners. But if it's something that you're looking for, ask your practitioner, right? Many of these wellness clinics are bringing in things like the Pnoe VO2 Max. This is a metabolic analysis, right? So this is the stuff that can, you can see, here in the picture. So there's a 360 degree view of the human body, right? So we're looking at breath and saliva and blood and urine, body scan and stool, and we're looking at all of the different functions of the body by this VO2 Max, right? And so this is a really cool system to help give you a deeper understanding of your body, and then we can take that information and we can dump it in and then continue to create a much more specialized version of a program or protocol for you or for any of my clients or patients, right? So that's a really good one. So a lot of the wellness clinics have it. Another thing that Susan has that we talk a lot about are the peptides. Those are really great anti-inflammatories, really great for gut health. They have them for all kinds of things, for mitochondrial function, for people who are struggling with autoimmune diseases and immune system issues, right? So a lot of cool things, but this Pnoe VO2 Max is pretty cool stuff. So that is something that if you want to do, if you were ever to reach out to me, which this is something that I'm starting to provide, we would put this into your program. And again, we're putting it all together, so we're super specific. Another one, though, a little more accessible, is called InBody. You've probably heard of InBody before. This is an interesting part of the story too, for me anyway. To me, I think that this is, stories help things become, relevant and, relatable. And, this is how I've learned, to dig deeper and deeper and deeper. But, going back to my own issues of feeling like I couldn't lose weight. Is it inflammation? What's going on? I work out pretty regularly. I do CrossFit, and I've been doing I've been working out most of my life, I think, but CrossFit now for 6 or 7 years. And to still feel like you're not getting to where you want to be can be really frustrating. So I've done an InBody scan. I think this was my 3rd time to do it, and I really wanted to take the data again and put it into this platform to help have a better understanding of my body. So here's what's fascinating. When I did the InBody scan, it showed that I was 17% body fat. I was shocked because I really expected it to be 24 or 25. Not that high, probably 22 or 23. And so it gave me a new perspective on how to start to manage what's going on. Is there an inflammatory process that's going on that makes me feel like I'm not as lean as I should be? Or is it all in my mind, right? I think that's something that's really important, especially for us women, to really take into consideration. Is it so much in our mind, and there's some things that we need to let go of. And so I say this because this is what I'm going through right now. Is this something that I need to let go of? It's really frustrating when you don't fit in your pants anymore, right? I know you hear me, ladies, but it maybe my body composition has changed enough where I'm not supposed to fit in those pants anymore. I don't know. I want to fit in them. Don't get me wrong, but it's just time for me to let some things go. But it's a mind-opening experience when you see where your body fat percentage is and what your body composition is in both ways. Even if you see that there's work to be done, then you know where to put the work in, right? And start to dig in on how to do that. So InBody is a really great resource for having a deeper understanding of body composition, water weight, muscle weight, fat, bone, all of these things, right? And you can do it regularly. You know, it's really accessible. You see it in gyms. That's where I had mine done, was in the gym that I go to. And so you can do it on a regular basis and start to track. And that goes back to how we start to know that we're making change, even though sometimes we don't feel it. Or sometimes the scale is not telling us about it, right? Muscle, we all hear this, but muscle, I think it's 5 pounds, maybe it's 7 pounds more than fat, right? So it's significant. And so when I get on the scale and I see this number going up, it freaks me out. But I have to keep in mind, and all of us as men and women have to keep in mind that if we are working out consistently and we're lifting heavy weight, which we need to do, especially as we age, right? That's bone health right there. We don't need to do a bunch of cardio. Cardio is good, but we've got to do both, and we've got to lift heavy weight. And I tell my clients, like, I want you to lift as heavy as you can lift without hurting yourself. And so, you know, it's being careful and going to a place where people can watch you and manage you and make sure that your form is good and you're doing things properly so you don't get hurt. But lifting as heavy as you can without hurting yourself is so important in long-term health and the body functioning. One of my favorite things when I started CrossFit was, you know, they talk about this is the functioning. It's the functional exercise. And what does that mean exactly? Well, when we do squats, we're not just barely, you know, going, you know, tabletop. We're actually squatting all the way down and lifting a heavy weight all the way up, which makes it really hard. But if you can squat like that, then you can sit on a toilet when you're 80, right? You can squat down and you can get back up. And I was like, makes so much sense. But that's the stuff that really matters, right? It's how we age and how we move that allows us to be optimal for as long as we're here. So InBody Scan is super cool and super informative. And then that moves us into some other technology, right? We have Lumen. I've had this Lumen technology now for, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years, probably 5 years. And it's pretty cool because it can help us understand when we're burning carbs and when we're burning fat. And there are cycles that our body is supposed to go through, and we're supposed to have this normal metabolic flexibility so our body functions properly. And it's burning carbs when it's supposed to, it's burning fat when it's supposed to. And there are certain times when this is supposed to happen. And if it's not happening, if it's not turning over the way that it's supposed to, then you start to realize, okay, here are these patterns. This is what we need to do to start to manage and create more metabolic flexibility. But it can also help us understand fasting. So I think, you know, fasting is biblical, right? Fasting is an important part of life to a degree. So I think that fasting, if we are, as a whole, so when I say that, it's men and women, doing a good 36-hour fast once a month, once a quarter, I think can be a really good thing. Some people can do more, some people can do less. But when we're talking about intermittent fasting, it's a very different thing. And it's really different for men and women. And I have tried, you know, it's another thing, you know, I tried the fasting thing and it did not change anything about me at all. So interesting. And so what we are learning about intermittent fasting and the differences in men and women, men do it really well. They don't have the same hormones we have, right? And so intermittent fasting can be really hard on our thyroid. It can be hard as women as we're going through perimenopause and menopause. It can be really hard and really stressful on us. We don't need to increase stress. What's going to happen? Stress goes up, glucose goes up, inflammation goes up, right? That's not what we're trying to do as we're trying to manage these hormonal fluctuations that we tend to deal with. And so having this Lumen, it's fascinating that if I wake up in the morning, that's the most important, you blow into this device, and so it's the most important blow of the day is that first morning before you do anything else, that first morning, or as soon as you wake up, so you know where you are. And then you do it every hour, and it tells you when you should eat, right? So I should eat early, like as soon as I get up, and then it was 11 o'clock before I should eat. So our body is so beautifully dynamic that to assume that we should do the same thing every day, day in and day out, I think is a problem, especially for women. But this is a great device. It's a great tool for men as well. They just don't have the crazy changes that we have as women. It's just the way that we're built, right? It's okay. And it's beautiful, and it's just a matter of respecting that and working with it, right? We work with who we are. So the Lumen is a pretty cool device, and then a continuous glucose monitor. So the one that I use is the Libra 3, and then I attach it to an app called Thea. And so that app allows me to monitor my clients and patients' glucose, so I can see what's going on. I can see what they're eating. They can take pictures. They can, put in their, what they ate, and it will show in real time where their blood glucose is. And so another thing that I think is so important is understanding that piece of it, because we have this view, which is, I think, mostly true, but that fruit is super healthy, and fruit gives us so much. It gives us an amazing amount of nutrition, phytonutrients, the colors, these things that we should get that also feed our microbiome. But I think that we have to be careful in knowing our body and when to eat it and how to eat it, I think is really important. And it's not meant to be overeaten. It's still sugar, right? And so an example for me is, as I started monitoring my own blood glucose, I got up one morning. I wasn't really even thinking about it. I was still pretty new to learning about what the data was providing me. And so I start cooking breakfast, and I ate a grapefruit. Spiked my glucose to 200. So we don't want our, 140 is supposed to be the top. 120 is ideal. So where we want our fasting glucose is like 70-ish, right? 70 to 80-ish, something like that. And when we eat, 120, 130, 140 max. It spiked me to almost 200. So huge eye opener for me to understand what fruit is doing to my body. And then I was able to take that in and look at my genetics and understand, okay, I don't eat fruit with fat. A lot of people can. I eat fruit with protein to mitigate that spike. There are also little tricks that you can do to help mitigate or to minimize those spikes. And it works. I mean, that's the best thing about having this continuous glucose monitor is you can play with it and really learn what your body needs. And that's the stuff that you take with you for the rest of your life. Now, the body changes and it's dynamic, and I think it's always good to do check-ins. I'll order another one and wear it, probably within the next few months, just to start to see where I am as I have continued to learn. But this is really important, and to be able to have access to my clients and patients' data in real life or in live time is huge, right? So that's the stuff. Those are the learning experience. It's the stuff that we talk about. and then we can talk about what are the tricks that help to manage these glucose spikes when they happen. Okay, so really cool stuff. So Thea, tracks moods, cravings, sleep, digestion, all kinds of cool stuff. So it's really fun to have, access to this technology that gives us so much information. There's one that I have not done yet that I want to, actually there are a few, that's kind of a lie, but heart rate variability is a big one. And that's one that is sort of next on my list for myself to start to incorporate in my plan, but also I think it will be soon incorporated with any of my clients and patients who want to do it, because I think heart rate variability it's a big deal, and can really help us to, again, mitigate stress, disease, symptoms, that kind of thing. So let's see. So this, I'm kind of going backwards a little bit, but I think that as we move through life, we have different goals and we have different needs, which is why it's so important to have that piece of the puzzle included in a program like this, because when we're in our early 30s, we tend, and younger, right? Imagine kids. I mean, talk about resilience as kids, right? But as we age, that resilience becomes less and less. So how can we improve our resilience? And then we have, as we age, our carb tolerance and recovery needs change, right? So what does it look like? If for me, where I am, again, just using myself as an example, there were times where I was doing CrossFit 4 or 5 times a week. I don't do that anymore. I'll do it 2 to 3 times a week, and then I'll go and I might do some kickboxing. That's a little less stressful. I might go to Hot Works. I have a client who owns a Hot Works. So if you've not done a Hot Works, it's super cool because you are doing your workouts, but they're hard, but they're mild. So it's yoga or Pilates or bar, or it could be row or any of those things that you're doing in an infrared sauna. So you're getting the heat and you're getting the infrared that is super detoxifying, and can help with mold and Lyme and all of these different things that people struggle with so much these days. So Hot Works is super cool and has been a lot of fun to take those days that are, it's a little less stressful than doing super heavy weight all the time. And I think that men can do that, but I think women, as we age, there needs to be less stress on the body. Sometimes it's not easy to deal with, right? But that's just kind of the way that it goes. So we want to, as hard as it is, I think that if we're moving through this process of optimization, changing our mindset about weight and changing our mindset about jumping on a scale all the time, because it is smart, because I think it messes with our mind. I have a male client, he was weighing himself every day. I was like, you gotta stop that, right? He was going to the gym, weighing himself, and so he's going through this whole process, this amazing big change that he's doing, where he's prepping his food and he's cooking his food and he's experimenting with new recipes and what are the things that are best for him and how does he feel, and now he's even, he fought me on this one, but he is now tracking his macros, because I'm not a huge fan of forever tracking macros and calories, but doing it for a period of time can give us so much insight as to what we're eating and how we're feeling with the food that we eat. And one of the things that he realized was he was eating more than he thought he was, and more of the carbs that he thought he was eating, right? So we manage our carbs throughout the day. Some people need more carbs at night. Some people need less carbs at night. Another fascinating thing for me, I try to stay away from carbs in the evening. For him, it helps him to manage his weight loss and it helps him to manage his sleep and his stress, right? So again, goes back to who we are, what gender we are, what our genetics are telling us, right? All of these things can help us know what to do throughout the day to be best. I mean, all of these little tiny things that seem so unimportant can be really important, right? Some people can do carbs at night, some people shouldn't. So much fun. But anyway, getting him to the point to where he realized that jumping on a scale every day was a bad idea, so he started doing it weekly. And doing it weekly, he now sees his weight trajectory going down, 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 instead of just constantly being focused on weight, knowing that the body's dynamic. There are going to be times when you're going to be heavier, and there are times that you're going to be lighter, but as long as if weight loss is your goal, as long as you're going and losing weight, or if you're checking in periodically, that's totally fine, right? I just think that we want to not be so focused on the weight, because if we're working out, we're building muscle. Again, that muscle is way heavier than fat, and so there's going to be an exchange there, and so, which is what we want, right? We want to feel good in our skin, and we want to have some muscle. Super important. Let's see. So I think we're kind of at our time, but this is the stuff that is, in my mind, the potential for the future. I say the future of healthcare. This is the future of optimization. This is the future of biohacking. This is what biohacking is. Is really taking the time and the energy to understand who we are as deep as we can. It's not of interest for everyone, and we don't have to go that deep for everyone. So for me, in my programs, I go as deep as people want to go, but I'm gonna take them as deep as I can and give them as much information as I can based on the data that we have. But the more data we have, the more targeted we can be, and that's the fun stuff. And it really is about knowing our body, knowing what it needs, so we don't have to manage symptoms, right? It's addressing health prior to the breakdown of health. And if we are already at that point to where we're experiencing symptoms, or we're a little bit heavier than we want to be, then that's okay, because we can still take all of this information, put it together, and start to tweak all of these different things so optimization can happen. I have a lot of people who come to me specifically for weight loss. What I'll tell them is, I know your goal is weight loss, my goal is that you're healthy. And if that's not okay, then we're not meant to work together, because I want to get you healthy, because when you're healthy, the weight's going to come off, right? It's not all fun and games and easy, certainly, but it is an amazing learning experience, and it's really cool when you start to know that what you're doing is the best thing for you. Because what's frustrating is what you're doing is the same thing that everybody else is doing, and it's not working. You're like, why is it not working? Well, you're you, and I'm me, and everybody else. Nobody is the same. If everybody was the same, my job would be a lot easier. But I wouldn't need a job, right? So this is the stuff that I love to do. I love data. I love showing. I love the light bulbs. A lot of this stuff is where people come in, and it's a little overwhelming, but then the light bulb goes off, right? And then the light bulb goes off, and then the light bulb goes off, and you start to have these realizations about your health and your body and what your body's trying to tell you. And this is the stuff that you take with you for the rest of your life. This isn't a one and done type situation. This isn't a hey, we hang out for a little while and then you go out on your own. This is your body for the entirety of your life, right? And it's always going to be that way. Again, the body's dynamic. I will always continue to learn about my body and what it's trying to tell me. But knowing what I know about it is the fascinating piece, and helps me to be my best and do my best. And again, it's the quality, not the quantity of our life. So I think that's it. We're going to hit on this some more next week. I have some things that I am going to share next week, and I think that this is a really fun, interesting topic, at least to me, right? I'm the nerd, but it's a ton of fun to dig into. So I'm going to dig into it a little bit more next week. I want to hit one more time on Susan Drake with Mountain Medical Concepts. Of course, you can see the QR code to reach out to her. If you're a practitioner, her products are for practitioners, but if you're a patient or a client and this is stuff that you're looking for, then ask your practitioner for it, right? That's how we start to get more of these things in the wellness world, is by asking the question. And so, finding your practitioners who have the PNOE VO2 max and metabolic analysis, that's a really cool thing. Finding your practitioners who are doing peptides for optimization or for symptom management, right? These are all we are on the verge, for one, on the verge of this super individualized, personalized healthcare, because we have access to genetics, but also these metabolic devices that can give us, real-time information. So reach out to Susan if you have questions, if you're a practitioner, and she's got great stuff. So let me know. Oh, interesting. Anyway, let me know if you have any questions, if there's anything I can do for you. You can go to the website, tastelifenutrition.com. We'll have more information about all of this stuff that we're talking about coming up on the website in the next week or so. And then, we will be back. It'll be just me again talking about optimizing your metabolic health, but it really is optimizing wellness. It's optimizing you. This is precision wellness. This is the stuff that is what matters in my mind more than almost anything else, is really digging into who you are. So that's what I got. Let me know if there's anything that you need. I am here to be a resource in any way that I can. So we will see you here in a week, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, streaming live on KUHSdenver.com. See you later.